Last week, Vice President J.D. Vance visited Europe and dressed them down like naughty children for Europe's rising authoritarianism, ranging from censoring their own people to literally canceling elections they don't like. The European establishment was aghast. The conference organizer in Munich cried. The German defense minister fumed that defending free speech is, quote, unacceptable, as Germans have in the past. The influential Guardian called it, quote, a brutal ideological assault. Bloomberg, meanwhile, lamented that, quote, the transatlantic alliance as we know it is dead. We can always dream. JD was speaking at a military conference in Munich. Perhaps the Europeans thought they would get another couple tens of billions from Uncle Sucker. Instead, JD came heavy, criticizing the EU's recent cancellation of an election in Romania because the populace won, while Germany mulls a ban on the second most popular party in the country, the AfD, also for the crime of being populist. In fact, prominent Eurocrat Thierry Breton literally threatened to cancel Germany's upcoming election if there's, quote, foreign interference, meaning if the populists win. JD moved on to Europe imprisoning its own people for peaceful speech, including in Britain the crime of silently praying in your own home if an abortion clinic happens to be nearby. Hundreds have been imprisoned for online posts in Britain alone, while European governments justify censorship with the literal Soviet terms, misinformation and disinformation. JD called out this censorship with, quote, you cannot win a democratic mandate by imprisoning your opposition, adding, quote, if you're running in fear from your own voters, there's nothing America can do for you. In other words, if you keep censoring, we can't be friends. The background here is that Europe has been sliding into Soviet-style authoritarianism. It's very likely Trump and Musk would be in prison if they were Europeans. And yet Europe's kleptocracies need America, meaning they need Trump. But Trump does not need them. I've mentioned in recent videos how the U.S. imports over $600 billion from the EU, yet we export just half that, about $370. Even at the height of the Ukraine war, when we were funding Europe's very existence, imports from Europe grew $30 billion, but our exports to them went up by just 2.5. This means we are far more important to Europe's economy than they are to us on trade alone. In case you wonder why Trump can knock the Europeans around on trade. But much more important is the unpaid mercenary services America gives Europe. We pay 73% of NATO's budget, whose purpose is defending Europe. Without us, Europe would have to double its military spending, meaning we're effectively handing them $200 billion per year in military protection with nothing in return. Of course, that goes to $400 billion when there's a Ukraine involved. Now, for perspective, $200 billion is the entire annual earnings of roughly 6 million Americans. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. The sclerotic authoritarians in Europe have painted themselves into a corner. Their economies are moribund. They haven't had an innovation in roughly a century, and they've become a left-wing welfare queen living on handouts from American taxpayers. As much as they would love to tell JD and Trump to take a hike, they cannot. JD's speech specifically tied free speech and authoritarian behavior to America's generosity, that America can't do anything for you line. So the ball is now in Europe's court to convince Trump why we should be helping them at all. As for JD, 2028 is looking like a very good year for him. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.